You're listening to Squatch Talks Podcast. Real stories and real encounters told by real researchers. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
How's everybody doing?
I don't know.
Doing great, man. Good to see your face, Nate.
Yeah.
I'm on the wrong screen. Hey, welcome to Squatch Talks Podcast. I think we're live streaming again.
Yep, we are. We looked confused there for a moment.
There, I got to get this thing up here so I can see us. Okay.
Yeah,
there we go.
that's the hard part.
So we're just, three guys talking about real encounters and real stories and dazed and confused at the moment. So I don't know about you guys. I had a trip out to Florida, like I was saying, and visited with mom, and I brought my 2 adult kids with me. So we had a nice visit, but there was some disruptions in the flight, of course. And, it takes me I need a vacation for my vacation.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's for sure. That's usually what happens.
Well, you flew down there right after the big storm came through, right?
Yep, we got canceled. The morning or the afternoon flight got canceled. We wound up not leaving until like 9:30, and then had to get de-iced. So that's another hour. I mean, by the time we arrived in Orlando, it was 3 a.m. and there were no Ubers. I had to put the Lyft app on my phone and then get a Lyft driver. So we got to mom's at 4:30. Yeah, fun stuff.
Oh.
Thanks,
Well, cool.
Frontier.
I'm glad you're back home safe and able to join us tonight.
Ready to go. So that disrupted our normal schedule. So we did not record Wednesday as we've been doing. So tonight is a special occasion, and we're here live streaming on Facebook on our Squatch Talks podcast page. So what do you guys want to talk about tonight?
Ryan?
Well, yeah, I guess it's being directed towards me. A couple of years ago, I had the opportunity to host a couple of expeditions here in New York, not too far from where I live. And, thankfully, I got a research area that I don't have to drive too far to. But yeah, I was approached by Matt to, do an expedition. I think it was September of 2 years ago. So that would be 2020. We did it during COVID. And we had some great success. Both Eric and Nate were both, on the expedition as the kind of co-host, so to speak. Eric was my co-expedition organizer on the second one, and
Partner in
Nate,
crime.
yeah.
And thank you for that.
But we decided. We decided to tonight to talk about some events that happened, on those expeditions and during the scouting for it. We spent a lot of time in this certain area and definitely have yielded some pretty interesting evidence. So
That's some of the best evidence I've seen on an actual expedition. Was that yours? I mean, and especially your second one. I wish I would have been there for that one.
Oh, I know.
You weren't there?
Nope.
No.
Is it too cold? I forget.
I don't remember.
It was cold.
Yeah, the first one was in September, and the second one was in October, right? Both of them late end of the month.
Early
But
November.
yeah,
Went into November 4th. I got back. Yeah.
I think. Yeah. So it was chilly, especially here in New York during those months. But I did mention some of the events that happened in earlier podcasts, especially during my scouting mission, where probably about 100 yards from where we actually camped for the expedition both times, something had approached me that was unseen but heard through footfalls. And then, having the static electricity type experience following that immediately was very paranormal. And just because I didn't see anything, but from this area, also behind it, in some pine trees, we found some pretty good footprints and cached a line of tracks and possible handprints and some possible glyphs, and um,
That's definitely an area where they sit and watch people. You
I
could
think
tell.
so. Yeah, yeah, I think so.
There
And it
is-
was funny because we didn't discover this certain area because it was, it was right behind our campsite. It was in some pine trees, and it was, for
Mhm.
some reason, until after the expedition is when I decided by myself to go in there and just kind of scope things out. And when I did, it was like walking into this whole magical world for me,
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and it just kind of, I mean, you were there the first expedition, right, Nate?
yeah.
So you guys came up a night early, right? And
Mhm.
you did talk about in earlier podcasts kind of what happened to you on that first night prior to the expedition. But I think that was kind of one of the major things that started us off for that expedition in September.
Oh, for sure. That was
Yeah,
that was pretty impressive. I mean, we had the camper set up, and was I guess your tent was there, wasn't it, Eric? Already, you were already there, right?
Was there? Yeah, Brian was in between me and you.
That's right.
Mhm.
yeah.
But that was it. That was the only tents that were there because Kevin
It
was
was
in
just
the
the three of
house.
us.
Yeah,
Right.
I think
Mhm.
I think that day, right? It was just the three of us that night,
right.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And then you right,
And you guys
and
went for the
Crystal,
walk around the trail, around
Actually,
the
right,
didn't
lower trail.
Jesse
right.
didn't Jesse show up too, and then he had to drive home and go and get Alex or something?
I think that was the second
Oh
one.
yeah. Oh
Yep,
no, that was the
yep.
first one.
First one.
So that first night, it was me and Eric and you and Terry and Crystal, right?
Yeah, and we
Yep.
stayed back at the campfire because Crystal didn't want to walk out. She was tired.
But Terry
Right.
came with me on the loop.
Yeah,
Yep.
Mhm.
And yep, we were all three of us were on the loop,
yeah.
and we were maybe hearing some noises on that walk. Eric,
Some rustling.
I can't
We heard some rustling, and you picked up a couple of small hits on the therm.
on the therm, right, right. But we
But
took our time going on the loop there, and as we were walking back, we're seeing kind of a interesting sight. So Nate was standing up against a tree, and I know we had mentioned this, but this is all
Mhm.
just a little prelude into what's going on. So
Right.
Nate was standing up against a tree. Now I don't know, you guys can tell on Zoom, but Nate's a big guy. You wouldn't expect to walk back, and see him standing there kind of frightened. You seem like you were somewhat frightened and spooked.
I was getting concerned. If I would have known then that Crystal was getting stuff thrown at her yet, because I don't think I knew that right at that point. I think she came out after you guys came back and told us that. But as soon as you guys disappeared is when I heard footsteps, and I'm standing. How far was the fire pit away from the house?
Oh
30
boy.
feet.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
Mhm.
Yeah.
30 feet.
40.
And the tree was between that. So the tree was what, 25, 30 feet from it's next to the fire pit.
Right.
But there was definitely something walking around as soon as you guys disappeared.
As soon as we disappeared, it's funny because
As soon as you disappeared.
it
Because I
makes
thought
me
you came back. I really did.
right.
I really did think you came back. But then when Crystal got tired, before you came back, Crystal got tired and went and laid in the camper. And then she said things were hitting the side of the camper. The aluminum part, because it would definitely fall and hit the canvas because it's a pop-up.
You would hear it.
But she
Right.
said it was coming in and hitting the aluminum on the side.
Which is interesting because if it
Right.
was something falling out of the tree, you would be hearing
And
things
if it
on the
was
roof.
something paranormal, I don't know that it would have been throwing rocks at the camper. Which
Right.
brings me back to this thing had to have a hand.
Right.
Oh,
It had to
that's
be-
what I've always thought. You know me.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's got to be.
Well-
it's got to be able to pick something up and throw it.
And throw it. Right.
Yeah.
It needs thumbs, basically, or fingers that can close and grip something.
Either
So,
a big raccoon or a Sasquatch.
Really
Yeah.
big raccoon.
but you know what? I feel like you can't discount just because something's got hands that there's some sort of supernatural or paranormal type abilities that could be involved with it. So And I think
Oh
you
yeah,
guys also agree with that based on our experiences. So,
yeah,
but yeah, so seeing, making me, hearing that makes me think that, you know, when there is 5 of us standing around or 6 of us standing around a campsite, something was probably watching,
hmm,
whatever it was that you heard was probably watching and observing and didn't feel comfortable enough to make itself known,
right,
having more people around. And like you said, as soon as we left, that's when it amped up.
yeah,
So
yeah. Because I really
it's,
did. It wasn't 10 seconds after you guys disappeared out of sight that I heard footsteps coming back from the exact same place you disappeared from.
How soon after we left did Crystal bail on you?
You were probably halfway because it
Okay.
wasn't long, and she went in, and it wasn't long, and you guys were back. So
Okay.
she stuck pretty
She hung
long.
in there. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's tough, man.
mm,
And the first
so,
night traveling, she doesn't usually do well.
Mm-hmm.
so when we got back, Nate's standing up against this
Yeah.
tree.
Back,
Well,
And
that was
back
the
against
thing.
the tree with the
yeah,
therm.
yeah,
Going
back
like
against the
this.
tree. Yeah. I mean,
Because
something
it was
triggered
circling me. It was
you.
circling me.
You felt like it was circling you
Yeah.
because there was only one side from where you were that there was any type of cover or foliage or anything
Right.
like that. So you think are you saying that you possibly heard footfalls by something that was unseen? If you're
I don't know
saying it
if I
was
didn't
circling
see
you?
it. My impression was that it was just out of the firelight that I couldn't see it.
Right. And but like, okay, so your back's against the tree and then the house is kind of behind you that way, but where
No,
you
The
the house
left.
was the
Yeah.
house was on my left. The
it was on your left.
behind me was the mountain and the road and the mountain.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So I had the
That
camper.
house was spooky enough on its own, let me
Right.
tell you.
Yeah, it was.
I stayed a night or two in the house with, Kevin and I
But
each had a room.
now,
And
if you remember too, when we were doing that, we were there early enough that we cleaned up. Remember, we cleaned up all the trash.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then remember the next morning after all that happened and we woke up and I walked around the house,
Mm.
there was a Dunkin' Donuts box there.
was under my window.
It was under your window. Yeah.
So I threw it out the
Yeah.
night before.
That's right. And we asked all the expeditioners,
Yeah.
did anybody leave this box? Did anybody bring this box? And
Yeah.
this box just kind of showed up in the middle of the field, right? Huh?
Yeah. No. Well,
Above-
yeah, there was nobody else there yet. It
and
was
above the window was where you saw the bats going in and out
That's
too.
right. Yeah. Yeah. That was creepy.
It was creepy.
And all them freaking dresses in your room.
And the
there.
dolls, yeah, man. I was a little nervous. That's why I decided to freeze my ass off in the tent after that.
Oh, this house, and like Nate was saying earlier, we the woods next to it and these trees that we were hearing these sounds and finding these track lines and footprints and stuff. It does that. The woods and those trees provide perfect cover for something to sit there and watch. And this house is used by, I'm not going to kind of give it away, but people that come and visit in the summertime, typically, lots of kids in the area given any given time. So, it's been known and it's been seen and witnessed, by many people that they just kind of like to sit back and observe.
And there's
Especially
horses next to
kids.
the building too. On the opposite side, there's a
Yeah.
pasture where they board some horses, remember? And that's another thing that sometimes, Bigfoot's interested in, because we've heard stories of them braiding manes and tails, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
Remember when we were scouting and what was the dog's name? That was with us? Milo. Remember, Terry and I walked up the mountain. You guys had gone the long way. Remember, I couldn't walk that day. I had my cane and everything. So we had walked up the field straight across from the house, or we went up straight across the house, up the hill and around all the way around the trail, trying to find where you guys were going to come up from the lake. That dog walked with us the entire time. We got to where a tree was pushed across the trail. Dog wouldn't go any further.
He stopped.
He
Yeah.
stopped. We kept going, and he just sat there and looked at us like, seriously, you're going to keep going?
Yeah.
And then he turned around and ran off. And we
Wow.
kept going.
So first I'm hearing this tale. That's
Yeah. I
interesting.
don't know
Yeah.
why I just remembered it. I
Yeah.
just remembered it now.
Well, things get triggered when we start talking about things. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
well, that's an interesting thing, because I'm sure
Yeah. He wouldn't go that way. Yeah.
And
based on
animals
our
are very
experiences there.
perceptive, you know, like as to
Mhm.
threats, or they might sense something more clearly than we would, you know.
Or they know what pushed that tree over.
Whew.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
I
neat.
I have to say that I almost know for certain that the people that occupy this area have had witnessed things, and I don't feel like they really even know how to acknowledge it, and it just gets
Right.
pushed off. And I'm pretty sure that that dog has had some experiences that if
Because
he
he
could
has
only talk.
he has run of the
Yeah.
place. You know, he goes wherever he wants, and
Yeah.
I'm sure he's run into him.
Oh, there was a building on the property that was with the let's say one of the caretakers for it, and we took a ride, and we went to this building, and he was kind of showing me around, and something had busted the door in. It didn't look like it was just broken
Mhm.
into with like a crowbar or something. This door looked like it was kind of ripped off its hinges. It was broken and on the top in one area. Um, and I didn't say nothing to him because I really didn't want him to know my intentions of being there. I'm just a camper, looking for a good spot to camp. So
Mhm.
I didn't say, there's something really fishy about the way this door is busted into, and it didn't look like anything was taken out. It was a door where there were supplies and stuff like that. I mean, there was no clear road for anybody to drive up in there if they had intentions of stealing something. This is private property,
Mhm.
and this house is not, or this this enclosure, whatever it is kind of like a storage shed / old house on the property, is not too far from the caretaker's house. So
Mm-mm.
anybody that knows these type of things probably wouldn't intentionally go making noises like breaking and busting down doors and stuff. So that's
Yeah.
another interesting thing. And this house is probably within, I would have to say, 50 yards of where Nate and had this experience with the dog. So that's kind of why I brought that up.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
it
Would have been
probably
It's
is.
mhm.
it also would have been a good spot to have a night op, I think. You know, we never did manage to get a group up there, unfortunately.
Well, we did the second expedition the following month. We Karen and Dan and myself, we set up there at the I
At
guess
the
you want to say
abandoned shack.
well, not too far from there. Yeah,
Okay.
we were up in that area across from the house,
Okay.
and it was chilly, and we weren't nothing yielded at that point. But
Hmm.
it was the maybe let's jump forward to probably the I don't know if you want to jump forward to the one of our best um, experiences as far as what happened on those expeditions,
Yeah, I
or
wanted
should
to hear.
we?
I wanted to start with. I forget what happened on the first one because you know how they all get jumbled together now. I mean,
You did, yeah, yeah. So on the
Oh,
first one, the first day didn't really yield anything. I think it was a Thursday,
Mhm.
and then Friday, I believe one
Yeah,
of the two of the expeditioners had. Well, go ahead, Eric.
you had a number of. I just wanted to say you had a number of attendees. I forget if it was 25 or 30 people that actually showed up,
It,
right?
it was pretty close to that, yeah.
Yeah, and in
Hmm.
fact, a couple of people on the live stream tonight listening are attendees. Patty and Tony were there at your. They were
Hmm.
newbies, I believe, at your first expedition, right?
It was their first
It was
expedition,
their
yeah,
first expedition, so that's kind of cool.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
think it was the second day, wasn't it Friday, when she and Tony had their experience, I
yeah.
believe.
I was just getting ready to bring that up.
Go
Yeah,
ahead,
yeah,
take it away.
yeah, yeah. So I'm sitting at camp, kind of being the camp monitor while people are out scouting about the property and stuff like that. And um, as an organizer, you want to make sure everybody's safe. You want to make sure that you are available in case somebody gets lost or whatever. So I was kind of tending camp at that point, and Patty and Tony come walking back up after their little excursion and little hike on the property and scouting for things, and they're smiling and they look excited, and and they got this big story to tell me, and I was like, okay, what happened? I was so stoked because you know let's just say they work in law enforcement, and they're very credible people, very in tune to observation and things like that, as they're trained to do. So they come at me with this story that probably about, I don't know, maybe
Backed
within
up with
100,
photos.
backed up with photos. Yeah, they definitely had a list of photos, not of what they initially saw, but some other things that would collaborate kind of what they saw.
Right.
So, excuse me. So they come at me with, that they start in by telling me that they were hiking about 150, 200 yards from where we were camping, just across from this house that we were talking about before, over this little mountain line and down towards the lake. And I guess it was maybe Patty that I had first seen in this kind of an area, but almost looked like a blind, like a hunting blind that was maybe made by something, could be a squatch or whatever, but they were kind of, I guess they heard maybe a noise at first, and then happened to look in this general area and saw what they thought was the torso and mid area of something that was behind this blind. It didn't look to them like, I guess that they kind of saw dark, which was almost like a dark fur. Patty, if you're watching and listening, you can definitely chime in the comments as to what it was that you saw. But I believe that they saw this torso type thing, and as they were observing, I think it kind of went out of view, and I think they heard some commotion or sound as if something had left the area, and when they went to investigate, right?
Said they threw a
I was
rock.
just going to say a rock was thrown. She just typed it just
Oh,
as
a
we were
rock was
saying it.
thrown.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Sorry. My there's so many things that happen. My
I
recollection.
recall it was thrown in Tony's general direction, though.
Okay, so that's what prompted them to look then.
Yeah, I'd
in
throw a
that
rock at him
direction.
first.
And then that's
Right.
when she saw the movement from up above on the hillside,
Right. Okay.
and it moved from
Good.
left to right out of her sight, and it was a fairly large blind, so it makes it
Yeah, it
difficult.
was.
Plus, you're talking about 80 to 100 yards, easy distance wise. You know what I mean? So
From where they were, yeah.
And I climbed
I
up that
thought
hill from where they
Yeah.
were, and it's a hike.
right, and right behind this blind, there was a game trail. Right behind it that was leading kind of a path along this top of this mountain ridge, which was interesting as well. So after they saw this, and during their hike, they was taking pictures and finding some odd and strange things, potential footprints. I think that they found maybe it looked like, oh yeah, that's right,
Possible
something,
butt print.
Yeah.
right. It had looked, the way the impression in the ground was, it looked as if something had been sitting on the top of this ridge overlooking the lake. It definitely, the impression in the leaves and the leaf litter was the shape of buttocks and almost legs.
And what's that
And
cast that we have seen, that famous cast that has the the impression that they did? They had
the skookum.
Skookum cast. Yeah, I couldn't think of the name.
Yes.
So it was the New York version of the Skookum cast.
Yeah, it definitely could have been. It wasn't all that defined. There was a lot left for us to interpret, but as we kind of drew the dots together, that's kind of what we figured out. It almost looked like there were heel impressions, right? As if where below the buttocks was on the ground, wasn't there
Right.
some sort of heel impressions? Yeah.
Yeah. And it was on an incline, and Patty just clarified that it actually did happen on Thursday, that she had her experience with
It was
Tony, because
Thursday.
they had just finished
Yeah.
unpacking and setting up their tent when they went out on
Oh,
the
okay.
hike.
Well, that's even better.
Great way to start off the show, as we say.
Exactly. exactly. You know, that's where the excitement starts in for all of the people that were attending, you know, because you come back and you get these great story and possible, you know, evidence of activity around where we're camping. Everybody gets so stoked. You know, the
Yeah,
excitement was in the air. And when something like that happens on an expedition, you might go, you know, the whole expedition until the last day, and everybody's just kind of but as soon as there's some kind of something, man, it's a complete turnaround for
Sure
everybody.
is.
yeah, that
Mhm.
was a good way to start that one off.
It sure was, definitely. I think so from there, I'm trying to think. I mean, you know, the reason I chose this spot is I had been spending a lot of time there, really not knowing that there was any activity prior. I was using it as my fishing spot. Like I said, it is a private lake and an area that I go, but it's I got permission to fish and use some boats that were there and stuff like that. So while out fishing, I definitely had experiences, and I had to kind of chalk them up to, oh my God. And then further investigating and finding footprints and other type of evidence and having these, you know, phantom footfalls, you know, happen. And I was like, wow, this would be the perfect spot for an expedition. But some of the things that were happening during the scouting sessions before this expedition, I have taken my dog out on the boat, and on a couple of occasions, he starts sniffing the air frantically, right? And he's kind of directing his sniffs towards the shoreline. And it's the same shoreline where all this activity has been occurring. And we'll get into some more stories from that shoreline about the second expedition where Eric was on. But he's sniffing the air frantically, and and then he starts shaking. And I've never seen him act like this before. You know, I mean, what possible scent could be in the air that's going to make him shake? You know,
Right.
I mean, he's definitely come face to face with bears in my own yard, and he doesn't. You know, he'll bark and bark and bark at him. He doesn't back down. He's like, "Get off my property," you know, type thing. And I think the other night he actually chased one off the property. He's not a big dog, but again, the way that dogs behave in the presence of a Sasquatch, you know, as far as what other eyewitness accounts that I've read, and you know, hearing from my dad and everything about his experiences, that they totally act strange. They act scared. They act nervous. They
Right.
are definitely shooken up a bit. So on a couple of different occasions, we've had rocks thrown at us while we were in the boat. There are beaver in the lake, and I've really tried to determine, based on the experience, if you know what was the sound of a beaver slap and what was the sound of an actual rock. And there's a definite difference if you are tuned into it. And a
Yeah.
big kerplunk, you know, and a big splash is different than kind of. You really have to kind of be aware of what the sounds, the
Yeah.
differences in the sounds, and be aware of what the beaver slap is all about, because you know it's definitely something that you can mistake for a rock being thrown in the water and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Um, Trying to think what else, that on that first expedition, I
Well,
believe.
that's where we went and sat that first night then, where they had the sighting. I went up there with John and Tony. I guess Patty was with us. I don't remember.
On the
I
top of the
think
hill
so.
across from the
Yeah.
house. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. We walked out where they had their sighting at the blind or whatever. And we weren't sitting there too long, and we had rocks thrown at us, and they just kept getting closer. They started, you know, they were landing 10, 15 feet from the group. And we had the LDR sitting up there with us. We were sitting in a small group, and the rocks were landing maybe 5, 10 feet from the group. Then they'd get 2 feet from the group. Then they were landing right in the middle, and they kept getting closer. You know, they were landing like right near our feet the whole
Do
time.
you do you feel like they were being thrown from a direction above you, below
Yeah.
you,
Yeah, they were
level with
coming from
you,
up the top. Coming from up at the
from
top. Yeah.
from the up the top? Okay,
Yeah. Like from where the blind was.
in that general
Yeah.
area, right?
I think that's
Right,
what
and
we
where
I think that's what we decided. Patty was with us, yes.
she
And I think that's
was.
what we had decided, that it was coming from that direction, coming down the hill.
I'm assuming it's not far from that where you saw that tree pushed over, or whatever was blocking the way that the dog didn't want to continue anymore.
That was coming from the top, coming back down the other way.
The other way, right? But
Right.
all in the same, you
Yeah.
know,
What do you need,
probably
Eric?
And
a
then
couple hundred
Friday,
yard radius.
that was Thursday though, right? You guys were
That
up
was
there.
Thursday.
And then
Yeah.
Friday, we, excuse me, we did some scouting, right? At the other location, right? We all went during
Yeah.
the day and scouted out some locations, and we decided on a couple of different spots that would be suitable, right? We had like 3 different teams for Friday night set up. Okay. And we had chosen, go ahead, Nate.
Just to go back to that, Tony just messaged down there. He said the rocks were actually being thrown uphill at us. And he's
That's right.
I forgot about that. They were actually coming up the hill. They were
Mhm.
coming from the lake. I remember that now because yeah, you're right. I forgot to say. I always forget key points like that. That's why we write it
Yeah,
down.
right. Yeah,
That's what we're gonna-
and it's a little unusual because, I mean, from where they were being thrown, do you feel like whatever it was could see you guys?
It would have had to have.
It would have, right? I mean, it would have known at least the direction that you were in. But I would think,
and I was there that night, Thursday night. That's where I was sitting with my team and group on that same spot, right?
right?
Where the rocks were getting thrown up at you guys, I think.
I
Mhm.
thought you were
Yeah.
down at the bottom.
Mm-mm.
Hmm.
Yeah, we had a team set up there, and I remember the guys saying that this is where the rocks were
rocks
getting
were
tossed
coming.
up at us. Yeah, I was with.
Yeah. Okay.
'Cause remember, I had like John and
Yeah.
Tom with me because it wasn't that hard to get up that
Yeah.
section. Yeah.
That's why I had them up there that first night. Yeah.
Mhm.
So this area of research, I mean, there's so many. I mean, without giving up the actual location, there are a ton of ways. And I guess, all right, so the Appalachian Trail isn't too far,
Right.
and there is 3 sets of conjoining power lines, basically. And these power lines are, I think they use them as highways, that definitely along with the Appalachian Trail and here in my area, these power lines and other type of gas line trails and stuff are all ways for anything that doesn't want to be seen, or to
Mhm.
get around in my area. And I know that they're utilized. I know that they are. No. I kind of lost focus here, lost track. So
Well, Friday night,
on
you led us all out to another spot, if you recall, where we had to drive through I think, a reservation area, right? And
Yep.
then we have Mickey with his didgeridoo
Yes.
performing for us, right? We all split up. We took some almost like a Pied Piper kind of thing, minus the actual movement, where we set up along this long trail, which is actually a road, but alongside of the creek or river, right?
Hmm.
And we went all the way down to the end. And yeah, that's where we had our team set up. I know I was with you that night, and a few other people, and Mickey was one of them.
There was, I chose that spot, because it's definitely along, there's a lot of sources and other reports coming from out of there. Okay. And while scouting, me and Jesse had experienced some weird day type activity. There was people around, and we had been scouting this area, looking, just listening and looking, and suddenly we start hearing these wood knocks, and they were fast in succession. They were repetitive, and at first we're like, could this be a woodpecker? We were kind of confused at first, but they were so random. Once in a while, there would just be one peck, or like a peck or knock or whatever, and then there'll be a couple more, but it was loud enough to where we didn't get the impression that it was made by some kind of bird. And it definitely, the area is so beautiful, and you know, I believe the Appalachian is very close to there. So it was definitely a good place that I'd like to return and do some more extensive scouting, and you know, yeah, the Appalachian was really close actually to this one. So yeah, that's where that's a lot of where my research, ends up being.
That night we did have slight activity. I do recall hearing some movement, and there was some sounds that we recorded from up above us on the hillside, right?
Yeah. I think there was a couple of occasions where we were hearing some stuff.
Some vocalizations.
But hearing that didgeridoo out in the woods was quite an experience. It was like nothing I've ever experienced before. If you've never heard a didgeridoo being played, you've got to vibrate your lips through this long tube. I think it's an Australian instrument, right? You got to vibrate your lips to make this continuous long sound. And I tell you what, if I was a curious animal in the woods, I'd be checking it out, because I mean, we were just having a great time listening.
He played that in a kind of a scary style, I have to say. It was almost unnerving style. You know what I mean? And
yes,
at one point I was like, hey, maybe you want to tone it down a little bit, you might be scaring him away.
Well,
I said that to him.
Yeah, no, he was playing it aggressively, but I don't know really the difference between aggression and non-aggression when it comes to it. I guess,
my first time hearing one,
or whatever, or more mellow. Yeah, me too. But he played it for us there, and I believe he played it for us in the camp as well.
I have cousins in Australia, mate, on both ends. I never even heard of it.
Yeah. But that's another great thing to do, is bring your instruments out in the woods, play them.
Well, you got your new one, right? You showed us that on the 101, the Squatching 101 episode, your train whistle.
My train whistle. Yeah. Definitely.
That sounds good.
I could toot out there, I'm trying to think if there's been any other, instances where I brought any instruments out in the woods. I think I brought a drum out once. I had bongo drums, a friend of mine let me borrow, and I played those. I don't think
we've done it in the Pine Barrens a number of times, and I have a harmonica that I typically keep in my bag too.
That's funny you brought up drums. Dan just commented on there about rough grouse. We were out with when they were doing the drumming. We were near a gas line too. So we were like, what the hell was that? We kept looking. We were walking through the woods looking for it. And then when we finally got signal on the phones and we looked up what it was, knew what it was, but that was pretty neat. Chasing a ruffed grouse through the woods when it was doing its drumming.
Yeah, gotta give that Dan a lot of credit for his fancy thinking box where he finds all these bird sounds.
That's right.
Negate our what we think we're hearing.
Well, yeah. It's important, though. It's important to get down to the bottom of these things, otherwise you're just calling everything a squatch.
I kind of enjoyed the thought that I had recorded how, growls though.
Growls.
You know what I mean? It was the Nighthawk. Remember, Dan? So he pointed that out to us.
Yours was the Nighthawk. Mine was a ruffed grouse.
Heather and I heard it here in New Jersey though, too. And I was told it potentially was a grouse. But it wasn't the right season, you know what I mean? And because of how it occurred and where it happened, first in front of us, so we decided to make a left and go down a different trail. And then we were walking about another half mile. And just as we were approaching that turn, it would take you back towards like a base camp. We heard it again, and it was so loud coming right from the corner of the woods, from the tree line. And she jumped like behind me, and she's like, "I'm gonna go back to the truck." I said, "You want to take the trail, or you want to take the, or would you rather take the road back?" But I've heard that sound, and I don't know. It sounds like, like they're beating like a primate pounding on its chest, and that's how loud it sounded to us. And I don't really think it was a grouse. And then we also thought maybe it was the military base, which isn't too far away, right? So not to go off topic from New York, but that's
it was Dan's fault.
Dan the man, Uncle Dan.
So I think wasn't that the first expedition as
should
well.
we talk about Saturday night now?
Yeah,
Saturday.
let's continue.
Well, what night was it where Larry and the group that he was with Frank and stuff, were out on the loop?
That was Friday.
Right?
That was Friday.
Was that Friday? Yep.
Mhm.
And that,
So,
and
yep, that's a good place to continue.
yeah, yep. They were on the loop. And earlier that day, if I'm correct, I believe that it was
Frank,
I think it was Frank Jr. and somebody else were, they were walking the loop, and they came up on something that when they approached it, it sounded
stood up and took off like quadrupedally, you know.
Yeah, right. And they were feeling the ground shake literally under their feet when this happened, and it was obscured behind some bushes and stuff. And I forget what prompted them to kind of, look in this particular area. But yeah, that was something that,
there's kind of a blind, Brian. There's kind of a blind there. There's this big tree that had fallen like vertically, you know what I mean?
Right.
And it was, or is that horizontal? I don't know.
Yeah.
I think horizontally, but yeah, there is like a blind right where that happened. And so he kind of, and I remember being there again and looking in that area and seeing some unusual like tree twists and things also.
Right.
But I think that's what spurred him.
Right. So that happened in the evening time, and so they decided to get a group together and go back there when it was dark, I believe. And as they did, or it was just, I think it was just getting dark, they're walking, and suddenly Larry, I think they heard a noise, and then Larry gets hit with this stick that he
that's right.
Right. He got hit with a stick, and he was so excited because, whatever it was, I think where this happened wasn't too far. It was very close to where they had that experience in the daytime, but getting hit with that, and then he said he caught something out of the corner of his eye, I think right before that, maybe the top half of a possible Squatch. And I think that's why he got excited, because he kind of caught the glimpse of like, maybe, I think it was maybe from the, chest up or something, of something that he didn't immediately identify. So when he got hit by the stick, I don't think anything followed as far as activity goes, but when they came back and told us about it, it all made sense based on all the other stuff that was going on around camp. So, and that was
Friday.
I'm trying to think, Friday, right? And then wasn't it Friday that one team stayed back and we did paranormal investigation, right? That was us at
That
the
was
stump dump.
Saturday. I thought that was Saturday.
Was that Saturday? Okay, that might have been Saturday, right?
But I stayed back Friday with a group, and we just went across the street over to those benches.
All right, right.
That's where I was. We didn't really have a whole lot of anything going on. I thought I saw something on the thermal, and I couldn't recreate it. I had a hit that looked like it was going to be an actual thermal hit of a Bigfoot, and it was my first time with the thermal, and I fumbled until I found the camera. I couldn't find it again, so that was my fault.
Right.
Gotta have your finger on the trigger, man. Gotta have your finger on the trigger.
You do.
Yes, you do.
Never know. Yeah. So Friday night, Eric, you took your group to another one of our famous research locations, right?
That was Saturday. Yeah, no.
Saturday night.
Friday we did the didgeridoo, didn't we?
Yeah.
Thank you guys for being my timeline.
Yeah. So Saturday was for me personally, the excitement, because I had like I said, we had scouted it out during the day, right? And then
wasn't that the lake?
Yes, and that's and so I had chosen the furthest point up north on that bank of the lake. Okay. And then Larry and his team was going to also go in on the AT. We hiked in on the AT to get there. His team stayed when they reached the shore. Okay. And this is like 40 minutes worth of hiking. I had 2 backpacks and all my gear and stuff. So by the time we got there, I was definitely a tired, sweaty mess. In fact, I stuck my head in the lake when we reached Larry's position just to wet my head. And then I continued on with my team up further because I had chosen this spot based on the location. There was like rocks, outcroppings on the hillside. I actually found a rock on the trail where you could stand on it and wiggle back and forth and make clacking noises. You know what I mean? It was like, had everything. It had a tree, a dead tree that was perfect for wood knocks. We had everything prepared, And so we finally reached that position, and we were set up in Nathan and
yeah, we didn't go far.
You guys stayed pretty close to where the parking lot entrance would have been, right? You hiked in a little bit and set up another location. And what was really cool and unusual is that we had those new Baofengs on this expedition, and we were able to maintain like real clear radio communication.
Yeah.
So there was no question, like when I would do a provocation or you did a provocation, we knew when it was being done, and we're able to like click to let we heard it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that was great.
Yeah.
Well, it's important. It's important to have that communication, because you lose it, and you're sitting there and another team is off in the distance and they do a call and you're like, was that you?
Yeah.
You start getting excited.
You do.
So should I handle this part of the story though? Because you guys were having nothing really, I think, on your end. I mean, except for there was a glowing orb.
Right.
Glowing orb. That was it. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's significant. Nowadays
it moved
when people
around.
Talk about people.
But you didn't see it though. Mickey saw it.
I didn't see it. No, but he described it, and I mean.
Yeah.
So this where he saw it was extremely close to where I had my, this is why we hunkered down in that spot, is because that's where I had my experience back in 2011, I think it was,
with the rock throwing.
With the rock throwing, right? So we definitely hunkered down right there. Just I mean, it's where you have an experience, you go back. Where they go, they revisit. I think that's just kind of how nature works when it comes to animals. When they occupy certain areas, they just revisit.
That was pretty much it. Which was significant, like you said, but that was pretty much all we had there. There was some growling, but I think that was determined to be me snoring.
Could have been. Yes. Yeah. You during those moments, I think your back was killing you a lot during that time, and
that's when I used to actually lay down on that stool that I carry. I would always sit on my knees and lay across the stool.
Yeah.
The only way to get relief.
You were a trooper, but so Eric took his group back, like he said, about 40-minute walk back to the lake, and looks like he's a little distracted right now, but I was
looking up the term to describe what you just said about how when there is activity in a certain location, it's in Dr. Russ's book, The Appalachian Bigfoot.
Oh, yeah.
He talks about that exact situation happening, and it starts with an H. It's not habituation, Harding effect or the harbinger effect, I forget, but there is a term he uses in describing that, and I thought I could locate it quickly, but there's no index. But no, he mentions it a couple of times.
I don't even know where I put mine.
And so what that basically means, though, is what you were saying, how if there's activity in a certain location, there's a good chance that they'll return again in the future, basically. So,
I mean, my theory is that wherever they are during any time of year, they're there for a reason. It's because typically during that time of year, the resources are plentiful. Once they have pretty much occupied that area for a given time, I think that they kind of have a route where they may have little mini home bases along the way, almost nomadic in that sense, where they move from area to area based on the resource availability. I think they do have some areas that are just bountiful in resources all the time, but
right.
I think, for the most part, the revisitation and the traveling and then the occupation of certain areas, I think is it just makes sense nature-wise, I think, you know.
I was hoping to get a comment from our ornithologist, but he isn't saying anything there. I was hoping he had another comment about their traveling.
Oh,
because
yeah.
Dan said he's a freelance ornithologist and he's terrible at parties. We knew he was terrible at parties for years, though.
So Eric, tell us about your story.
Okay.
Tell us what happened.
Well, that was a great night, I have to say. And, you know, as I've said before, me being the diehard Squatcher, of course, I don't give up until I get the actual, you know, evidence to take back with us.
Yeah.
Am I, can you hear me? Because
yeah,
I just,
you
good. At least my mic's not crackling tonight, but
that's right.
My team was out there and we had tried doing some back and forth provocations. And as I mentioned, we had the communication going strong, and I was able to communicate with Larry and his team. And I guess it was close to about 2 a.m. and he was ready to call it a night. So he was going to hike back out the way we came in to the parking lot. Right. And I remember them leaving, and like 5 minutes into the hike, he radios me, "I just had a rock thrown at me." I said, "Cool." That's awesome, you know?
Yeah.
So we were still hanging out, and you know, a couple of the people on my team were getting tired, and they decided they were going to leave also and hike back down the road to the other parking lot entrance, and hope that Larry and his team would pick them up on their way out and then bring them back to their vehicles, right? So I called over to Larry's team and I let them know, "Would you please, you know, assist in this with these two guys?" So as they're leaving, though, they had left our group. I wasn't sure if their radio was on, and so I know one of them was Bob, and I think the other one was Scott. So I tried to contact them on the radio, and I didn't get a response. So I remembered Bob had wanted to hear some samurai chatter.
Oh yeah, I remember this.
So I started doing samurai chatter across the lake. And at the very end, and for anyone who doesn't know what that is, it's kind of like, you know, I don't know if you've heard the Ron Moorhead Sierra Sounds CDs, but it's kind of like a, you know, kind of talk, you know, and Mike Young does it really good too. So, you know, he and I usually go back and forth. In fact, we did it on the next one, but this night I just said, "Oh, let me do some samurai chatter." And at the end I said, "Turn on your radio." You know? And then I could see them fumbling with the bag, and I could see the headlight come on, you know, the headlamp. And I think then at that point they had their radio turned on. And just after that, I had the father and son, or the father and daughter on my team also.
Oh yeah.
We hear something come across the lake, like a howl. Okay. And so I'm like, wait, I hear it too, you know. So I had my stick recorder going with the Kimbrough audio mics, and I put on the headphones, and sure enough, we're getting these howls one after the next. I have over a dozen of them recorded, and it sounds like a mournful female type call. Just whoa, a few seconds. Whoa.
Same thing, yeah.
And yeah, there is a kennel or something further down across the lake to the right, but this is not where that sound was coming from. Okay.
No,
and
no,
it did
and it
not
wasn't being
sound
made
canine.
by a dog.
No, it wasn't. And I'm still waiting for our friend Monongahela to you know, analyze that for us. Hopefully he'll get back to us soon with that response. I'm still looking for this term. I'm sorry. Put the book away. But I have it queued up. I don't know if we can, you know, manage to figure out how to do it for the listeners or not, but
try it.
I can certainly try it. And
yeah, it can't hurt. Well, it might hurt. It's starting to hurt me. I need ice.
Can you hear that?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's loud.
Here it comes.
Turn on your radio! Oh, yeah!
I gotta get the headphones. They're light over here.
Yeah.
I'm listening to the microphone.
Go.
Something's responding. Oh my God. Scott, is your radio
I
on?
can hear it.
I gotta hear that through the headphones. Hold on.
We're not hearing any of this, Eric.
It's okay.
Oh my God. That's not a dog. Bitchy! Oh,
Really not.
I got that recorded.
Nothing's coming through.
I get chills.
I know it's dead air, but I'm going to add it in tomorrow.
Yeah, but nobody
when
here
I
can
edit
hear
it.
it.
I know, but that's a shame because we haven't figured that part out yet. And I explained that to you guys before we started that there might be some dead air, and I will put it on tomorrow.
You should have told everybody that was watching.
I thought you could hear it. I said, "Did you hear the beginning?" You said yes.
Well, we heard
And
you
I said,
talking,
now I
but-
can't hear it.
I know.
Yeah,
Hey,
closer.
it's and my mic is down here. It's modern technology, folks. Okay, I'm not modern. Okay, but we'll figure it out.
We are figuring out.
There's other people that have these kind of problems.
Yes.
But because we were, kind of quiet, what I'll do is I'll add the audio tomorrow morning, and hopefully we'll be able to hear it. Just remember, if I'm going to do a scream or somebody, don't have the volume turned up too much wearing headphones. I'm just warning you now. Although at the beginning I say, turn on the radio. Okay. And then no more talk from me. So it's good. But no, that was exciting. And I being the kind of, group guy that I am, I always let somebody else listen. So I took off my headphones and I handed them to Dan. I think it was the gentleman's name was
was it
Dan.
Max?
Max, that's who it was.
Max.
That's
Yeah.
funny because I just said Max wasn't with me because your dog was going off in the background.
Oh,
It
yeah.
wa- I did have
Yeah.
Max with me.
You
How
did
about
have
that?
Max with
I
you.
had Max
Yeah.
with me.
Yeah.
So I took
Yeah.
off my headphones. I handed him the mic. I said, hold it real steady, and he was listening to it and he said, no, that's not a dog. He could hear it too. And so, of course, whenever we're recording this kind of stuff, I got to be honest. On one hand, I hesitate to hand off the recorder because if somebody jostles it or moves around, it's going to step on the audio. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
But I can clearly, when I was listening to it just now, I have at least 3 or 4 real clear howls that we'll be able to put in, and it sounds really
Good.
awesome. So
That's awesome.
obviously, those guys that just walked away, we get this response. Everybody in the group is excited, and when we had discussed leaving, right, with the other 2 team members that wanted to hike down the other trail, I said, no, I want to go back down the way we came because I want to have a rock thrown at me.
Right.
What I mean? That's the part of the
Yeah.
fun.
Right.
Right.
So we got back to base camp at what, 4 a.m. I think, 4 a.m. And you're like, hey, there's a burger on the grill.
That's right.
Yeah, all right.
No, yeah. We
And
got
I
back
sit down
and
to eat it, and it's cold, but it was a burger on the grill.
yeah, it was a burger. It was substance at that time of morning
So,
after you've been.
Didn't we eat a
Burning
crap
it.
load of hot dogs at that time?
I had a cold burger. It was like 4:30.
We were throwing stuff on the grill when we got back. That's
Yeah,
all I
I
know.
thought so.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys had the hot stuff.
So
So
back to
wait,
back to
I'm not done with that, TL.
Okay,
Come on.
okay,
Remember,
good,
this is
good.
when I had the burger. Okay.
Oh yeah.
10:05. I'm now getting into my tent, and I'm getting comfortable. I left my recording device leaning up against the tent for some reason. I had trail cameras on both sides also, and I'm laying there and I'm listening to a Dogman episode from Dixie Cryptid in the right ear. I had my earbud in, and across the road from our base camp up the hill was an owl hooting in the distance, right? So I have the owl in my left ear and the Dixie in the right ear. I have the fire's still going. You kept that thing blazing the whole time we were there, remember?
Yeah.
Giant logs. So there's a fire on my right. It's still pretty dark. And on my left, I'm laying there. My phone is on my right. I'm laying on my back in my cot, and I hear crunch, 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 approaching my tent. And you said you have that on audio even. I'm hoping you can find
believe I
that.
do. I should. I had the auto running.
Right.
When I
So,
was sleeping, just in case. Yeah.
and my audio went off for some reason. I don't know why, but I didn't get
Uh-huh.
any of it recorded.
Yeah.
But I'm like having PTSD from Pennsylvania expedition when one came up and pushed its hand over my head, right? So I hear this thing approaching, comes up, and it stops basically within a foot or two of the tent. And I'm like, yank the earbud out. I go, here we go. Like that, right? Like Dixie says, here we go.
Mhm.
And then I realized that the fire is on my right. I said, I'll just pretend I'm sleeping, The
Mhm.
fire is on my right and the phone is on its cradle on my right. So it's both illuminating me from the right. So whatever this was on the left would be able to see me. So I was like, oh crap. So I knocked the phone over, and then I realized the fire is still doing it anyway. So I said, you know what?
Right.
If this is my time to go, at least I'm going to die doing what I love. And I rolled over and I went to sleep.
Yeah.
That's my
Yeah.
story. That's my tale.
Yeah.
I'm sticking with it.
Well, we got into this, I think, the last episode, where when you're in your tent and it's the end of the night, and you've had a long day, you've been hiking and everything else, your boots are off, you're in your jammies, whatever,
Mhm.
and something happens outside, you just, and under any other normal circumstances, you'd have the gumption to go out and look around, but it just seems like in so many instances, at least for me and people I've talked to, things like that happen, and you just fall asleep.
I didn't even think about it.
Just fall
Never
asleep.
thought about it. The same thing like I told you in
Yeah.
Pennsylvania when we talked about it.
Yep.
Didn't even think about that. I passed out, right? Now I'm thinking though, what I should have had instead of just trail cameras, I should have had the GoPro set up, connected to the phone, right?
Mhm.
Or now we know with the FLIRs we can actually communicate, right? And have them
Yeah.
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
oh my gosh, this is incredible. The steps we're making with the different technology. This is going to be the year, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
I hope so.
It's like
I
outdoor,
hope so.
outdoor surveillance camera kind of thing,
Mhm.
Right. Right.
But no, did I have that going? No.
Let's revisit Saturday night after the Howls. All right, where we had the who was it? I think it was Bob and Scott maybe walked out by themselves.
Yeah. Mhm.
Away from you guys, right?
Oh yeah, you
And they were
remember?
yes, yep. They were heading back to the road. And I think they were hearing owls,
Mhm.
right? And
Two different
Scott's pretty
types.
big. Yeah, two different owls, and it caught Scott's attention, especially because I think he's up on that nature and those type of things, and he knows about owls. And this one owl was sounding off, and another owl was also sounding off, but it was the kind of owl that would take out the other owl that was sounding off, right? I don't remember the names of them or anything like that, but he found it odd because typically in the presence of the larger, more dominant owl that was sounding off, the other one would stay quiet. So, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that at that point, after they had heard the owls, that's when they started smelling the stench,
Yeah, I think so.
right?
No, they heard these combating owls, the noises, right? They smelled it actually after they got back into their vehicle and they were driving back to base camp, and they were actually coming around that turn, same turn that I think you ran into that woman who had the
that
road
woman,
crossing.
yes.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
that's when they smelled it, and they said it smelled like a mushroom farm.
Mm-hmm.
But it was
Okay,
when they
yeah.
were returning. I don't think they smelled anything up to that point, but they felt like they were being like paralleled.
It was a great horned owl and a barred owl.
And a barred owl, right? Yes.
Okay. All right.
And of course, a great horned owl is the more dominant of the two. So they found that to be unusual also. And what they thought was maybe the one owl had gotten pushed into the other owl's territory because of an individual paralleling them back to this exit.
Gotcha.
That's what I'm pretty sure the story was.
Right.
Like
right.
that, yeah.
Yeah. And they said it smelled like a mushroom farm, which I never smelled a mushroom farm, but I'm supposing it really stinks.
It's
lots
fungi.
of manure.
There's fungus among us.
Very earthy. Right. But I guess they hadn't smelled that smell as if before until they were leaving.
Right.
and they had just walked through there. So something triggered a stench. I don't know.
Yeah, and it was
Uh,
funky, and they definitely picked it up, and they
yeah,
were
yeah,
quick to comment about it. So that was great because having the, like we've talked about in the past, having the audio that we can take home with us is, for me anyhow, exciting, and it makes it
Yeah.
all worthwhile.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was the highlight of my experience. Aside from the great food that we ate and the camaraderie and all the people we met, like Patty and
Mhm.
Tony and gosh, so many people on that trip.
Yeah, we gained a lot of returning people.
Mhm.
I guess yeah. I think between the three of us, we've had people kind of going to all three of our expeditions.
Yep.
The same ones. That's
Yeah,
what
yeah.
happens.
It turns into a family, that's for sure.
It does, and especially when you see people returning, it means you're doing something right.
Yeah.
And
Of course, we kid
we
around
definitely.
and we say Patty's our good luck charm now, so she's obligated to
She
come on
really
everybody's
is.
expedition.
I mean, I feel like she's been a part of so many of the stories and tales that we have to tell from our experiences here in New York.
Are you gonna
and
tell the
even with stories you and tales that we have to tell.
Are you gonna are you gonna tell the story about being on the lake in the
Well,
boat?
that's on the next expedition. So yeah,
That would be
Oh,
on
we
the
gotta
next
wait
we
for
want to
another
do part one and
podcast.
part two.
Part one and part two, yeah.
We could, yeah.
I mean,
I'm getting to
we've
that
knocked out an
point.
hour doing this one, so I mean, I can use
Yeah.
it.
I could definitely use standing up right now. My back's starting to cramp. So
Yeah.
Hey, we already would. Yeah, I know.
That's right.
Well, hey, before we go though, and I want to thank everybody again for hanging with us and joining us tonight. It's great to have you on board, and hopefully you're getting something out of our conversation tonight. But yeah, we might. I think if you guys agree, since we can divide this up and we can talk about the.
Oh yeah.
I call it the November expedition. I know it was probably October 30, whatever, to
Right.
November 4th, whatever.
Yep.
Yep. And that one was also exciting, but we can make that part two. And hey, that gives them a reason to come back and join us again next week.
Yeah.
Since you guys are dealing with some, physical pain at the moment. but tomorrow we will be live, hopefully on YouTube, right around 8:00, hopefully. And I will be joining Nathan in Pennsylvania tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay. So we hopefully will do a pre-YouTube thing live on this channel. Okay. Just to give you a little incentive to join us maybe on the YouTube, show. So you don't have to, because obviously you just listen to it tonight. Tell your friends, share it,
Share it.
and
subscribe. We'll never get that anymore.
We'll be in sync one of these
I'm
days.
just we're gonna practice that one. I'll just record us doing it and I'll just insert that at
There
the
you
end.
go.
Just insert it. There
That
you
might
go.
be better.
There you go.
Okay.
Yes.
So
yes.
yeah, that might
Like, subscribe, and share. Please.
does that
do.
sound
Yep.
Does that sound like a plan to you guys?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
All right, cool.
All
Well,
right.
again, thank you everyone for joining us, and guys.
Hope everybody enjoyed it.
Yes, most definitely. You guys have a great night, evening, or whatever it is as you're watching here. So
Thanks again. Good night. Thanks for checking out this episode of Squatch Talks Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, follow, and give us a like, and stay tuned for more exciting stories on Squatch Talks.